What up, people? Welcome to the Doing Everything Different podcast. I'm your host, Devin Lars. And today we have a very, very, very special guest, a good friend of mine, somebody that inspires me, does some amazing creative work, worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, from Target, Nike, helping create and lead creative direction. We've worked on a couple projects together for the Warriors, and just a super inspiring dude, and I'm excited for the conversation. So welcome to the show, Brian Madden.
Thanks, Dev.
How's it going? So I had to ask this, and I wanted to wait until this. There's no correlation with John Madden, is it?
No, believe it or not.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I used to tell kids on the playground that I was his long lost relative, but I kept asking my parents, there's no relation. And so it's all totally out of just seeing the work and you know how things go.
I love it. I love it. So to give context to people that are listening, Brian has worked with Madden on some cool stuff. It's funny, every time I watch the New Heights podcast and in the back of Trav's background, you see your work there. And I think that's just super cool. He's left it there. He's built it. So talk a little bit about how that even happened, the collaboration with Madden, because I saw the behind the scenes and it was just super inspiring.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm gonna go way back. So 2017 to 2019, I was working at Nike in Oregon as an interior designer, basically. So designing interior brand for headquarters, spaces around the world, Australia, Japan, Tampa, which I love. And I actually decided to move to San Francisco during that time to be with my wife because I wanted to be close to her. And so I left my job at Nike. And in doing so, I decided to create an art piece for a show that I was going to be in that was inspired by my time working there. So around that time, a lot of inspiration from marble. So like terrazzo, marble, from time spent over in Italy. And then looking at shoes day in and day out for years, even before I was working at Nike. So I decided to take that inspiration, put it together, and I created what I called Air Manchego, which was a set of 3 marble cheese boards that looked like Air Maxes. And so I made these shoes, and I'm sitting at this coffee shop. I had moved to San Francisco, sitting at this coffee shop down on Valencia Street in the Mission. And I'm working on my laptop, designing these pieces on the computer. And this woman sits next to me. She just finished up a ride or something. She's having a coffee and she's looking over. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to make these marble cheese boards, going to put them in an art show." And she's like, "Cool, I'll take it." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, how much you want?" So we just did the first transaction right there. I had never made one of these, and she bought the first one. And so that's how it started. And from there, I put them in the show, gave her the pieces. And then a friend of mine asked me to make a sneaker for Travis Scott for an event that he would be putting on in New York, in Soho. And so I whipped up these pieces, found this beautiful green marble. It was the Cactus Jack 6, if you remember that shoe with the pocket on the side and everything. And I put the pieces together, created the piece. I was so stoked. And I sent it off from the FedEx, sent it to the event. And then I go about my life for a couple weeks. And I'm just wondering, oh, so what happened to those shoes? And so I called him up and he's like, "Oh, man, sorry to say, the event got canceled and your shoe cracked in half." And I was like, "Oh, man, okay." And that's the way the cookie crumbles. But luckily, I had taken a photo of it beforehand. I put it on my Instagram, and this Instagram page called The Tourist picked it up. It's this sports marketing, sports art inspired page. I know a lot of your work's been on there. And they picked it up, started sharing it around. And then out of nowhere, I get this email from a good friend of mine, Joe, he was at EA at the time. And I'd never met him before. He just said, "Hey, I love that piece you did for Travis. Love to do it for the 99 Club Awards that we're doing for Madden." And I was like, happy to help. And so that's what started the relationship. And it's funny how when you're coming up, you get these opportunities where you're like, "Oh, this could be everything." Mm-hmm. And really the journey is all about the combination of all of the things we do, the amalgamation of everything. And so that first relationship that created from a broken piece and what could have been a missed opportunity turned into something beautiful and was a 3-year collaboration, making awards for Aaron Donald, Travis Kelce, Tom Brady, folks like that. And it was just a beautiful time. And so I'm so grateful for Joe for seeing the work, for my man Jordan for being inspired by my work and asking me to create that piece for Travis too. And it's just amazing how things go. So the Madden work was all
That's
about
dope.
relationships, all about relationships.
That's dope. I think it's always funny looking back at the journey and seeing, like you said, how you've gotten there and all the little bits and pieces of, things happen for a reason, and all of these different things. And so to look back and to know that it started all from literally sit down on your computer and somebody seeing it and saying, hey, I want that. If that's not confirmation right there that you're doing something right, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's super cool, man. That I didn't even know the backstory of that.
Crazy,
so
right?
it's super crazy. And I know that you had a background at Nike and had the experience there. How long did you say you worked there?
About 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
Did you get to travel, or what was that experience like?
Yeah, I got to travel a lot. And also it's so sunny right now. So I'm just loving the sun.
It looks great.
Thanks, man.
Golden hour.
Sure is. Yeah. So when I was at Nike, Nike basically poached me from the agency I was working at. It's called SGK. It was a fantastic agency in Portland. So Nike poached me from the agency to go from retail design to interior design for headquarters and corporate spaces for Nike. So it was a plot twist for sure. I had never done that type of thing before, but really it was about telling stories. And so the projects I worked on were like the relocation of Nike's Japan headquarters to Tokyo in advance of the Olympics, or taking a really beloved but outdated headquarters in Australia and pulling it into this central business district in Melbourne, Australia. And so these fun experiences came with, definitely a lot of travel, a lot of global collaboration, working with the agencies and internal partners around the world. It was just a hugely growthful time. And so, I got to go to Australia, Japan, and then Tampa, which I'm a big Tampa fan. I had a lot of great times down there, creating a space for Nike with the team. It was just so much fun. So good times.
So before you went to Nike, was your full career agency, or had you worked with brands before?
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
test.
Sorry about that.
Okay, there we go. The great thing of post editing.
Oh yeah, yeah, we're good. No worries.
So before you were at Nike, you were at an agency. Was your whole career up to that point agency life, or have you worked with brands before? Was that your first time going from agency to brand, or what did that look like from your early days?
Yeah. So my trajectory was, I think my first like legit job was like a driver for a concert venue. So that was like my first thing, client services. And then from there it was making custom car parts in a shop. And then from there, a small architecture studio, interior architecture. And then after school, I apprenticed as an industrial design apprentice, or basically an intern for one of my professors, Josh Owen, who was more focused on I would say like the European style of design, where like it's the designer as author, like artistic design, where you're really putting your fingerprint on a design for a furniture, housewares, etc. And that was really growthful. And from there, I actually applied to an experience over in Italy called Fabrica, which is United Colors of Benetton's research facility for under 25-year-olds in Treviso, Italy, which is actually like 30 minutes from Italy. It's like 30 minutes from Venice, and it's a tiny version of Venice, just like it, but much smaller.
That's cool.
Really beautiful town. So I got to go over there for a couple of weeks and work in this product design department, and I was working with these European designers who were really good at crafting a story around their ideas and their vision. And they could have, I remember they could have like one sketch, and it was like a loose, like almost like a napkin sketch, but they had these beautiful stories that they could tell. And at the time, because I had been trained very much like industrial design, like tons of ideas, really just vomiting out ideas all the time. I was really good at creating range, but the depth of each one, I think looking back, that was the big learning moment. It was like, I can have a lot of ideas, but there's no depth. So went over there, came back very humbled, and out of nowhere, so I went to RIT in Rochester, New York, Rochester Institute of Technology, to play lacrosse and study industrial design originally. But when I got to the school, I tore my ACL, then tore my PCL, and really leaned much more into design and creativity versus sport. And luckily, I still had my old friends from the team. And so after I got back from Italy, one of my friends who I met up with at the lacrosse alumni event that I went to, he was like, "Hey man, I'm living in Portland, Oregon. It's awesome. I'm basically creating retail fixtures for Nike at an agency." And through that conversation, I was like, "Wait, so industrial designers can work in retail design and do what?" And I had no idea what was going on, but I ended up flying out to Portland for an interview, had my old portfolio, put it all together, shared all the projects I'd done up to that point, and then came back with this opportunity to step over and become this retail designer from this more European style, like furniture and housewares design, more focus on what I called furniture for shoes, which is this unknown, at the time for me, unknown layer of design where there's graphic designers, industrial designers, mechanical engineers, 3D renderers. All these people are creating experiences that we interact with all the time in retail. So I went out there and started becoming a retail designer, and I was designing furniture for shoes at that point. So working with Nike, Jordan, doing launches in House of Hoops in like Harlem and Chicago, creating these experiences where I got to sketch with the client, work with a team of multidisciplinary designers to create something fairly quickly, and then manage the installation often in the middle of the night in New York City or Chicago or LA. It was just such a blast.
That's crazy. Going from literally the conception of it to the production and execution of it is wild, because there's so many, it's so different. You know, the process is so different, and there's so many different pieces from taking an idea and bringing it to reality. That's hella cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
What? Okay, so you were at the agency, and then so then you were at the agency designing for Nike, the retail
Yeah.
spaces. Okay.
So this agency was really good at concept to creation to like installation, et cetera, of all sorts of stuff. So like retail displays, pop-ups, interior design of new stores, even architecture. So I got to work on all sorts of projects, often from the sketch standpoint. So I was an industrial designer, excuse me, and I was, as an industrial designer, I was sketching and concepting at the table with clients where they're like, "Hey, this is what we want to do. We got a sneaker launch for Ken Griffey Jr.'s Hall of Fame induction. We want to do 3 launches through the season, and we want to send these kits to all these different VIPs." So like at the time, I think it was like LeBron, Obama, Barkley, people like that. And I would work with the client to figure out like, what's the story we want to tell here? And then I would translate that through industrial design sketching and concepting into an experience that these folks would unbox, you know, for instance, for seating kits and marketing projects like that, while simultaneously doing like fixture design for the North Face or POP displays for Starbucks. You know, even doing like Coca-Cola store concepting, stuff like that. So it was wild. I'm not sure how many NDAs I broke just saying that stuff, but this was like 10 years ago. So I think we're all right, but it was
the statute of limitation. We're good. We're good.
yeah.
No, that's cool, man. I think from a standpoint of how we've collaborated together, and the work that and the knowledge that you brought to KURIEO, our agency. You know, in 2020, we collaborated on the Oakland Forever seating kit. And that was our first, we had done kits before, but we didn't know really even the term seating kits and all this stuff. And I remember mentioning it to you, and the dynamic and just the wealth of knowledge that you brought in terms of that entire process and how to bring that to life. It's still one of my favorite kits that we've done, and the client it was just a massive success. And so it was cool to see, and now to hear the backstory, because I didn't know the full context of what that was. So to hear the full backstory, it's just really cool to see what we were able to kind of collaborate together and bring to life for, for the Warriors.
Yeah, thanks. It was so much fun. And it was cool to have an opportunity where we can connect in that way, where the appetite is there on all sides to be like, hey, we've got this really killer opportunity. You got the skills, let's connect. And then from there, proliferating into all sorts of new synapses connecting, and you're doing all sorts of kits. And it's just really inspiring to be a part of that moment of like creation where it all just expands from there.
Yeah, man, I love it. And I appreciate, even the work that you've done. You were at Target Open House. You brought us into that to help with, that stuff. You've helped us a lot in terms of on our journey and just kind of exposing us to new mediums and ways of how art and executions are done. And it's really cool to see kind of what you've done and even making the transition into opening up your studio. I want to talk a little bit about that because we talked about, you having a background at Nike and the agency. I think a lot of people have a background in corporate or agencies and want to do that and have this idea of either starting a studio or branching out on their own. And I think that it takes a lot, right, to be able to do that and to have the confidence to come out.
I think we got frozen again.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now.
Okay. All right, cool. It takes a lot to, make that transition from going from corporate life to opening up your own studio and doing your own thing. Talk to me a little bit about that transition and how you made that move and what the experience has been like. So I know it's a big question.
No, I'm thinking about it because I remember I was just speaking with a recent grad in my studio last week, and I was talking about this memory of right when I graduated. I said I would work for somebody for 5 years and then put out my shingle and do my own thing. And where it turned out to be was 10 years, which just goes to show that anything can happen. But I remember thinking that it's about learning first. And then if you have that internal spark of like, I need to do my own thing, it's going to come at some point. But me as a younger person didn't really know when that would be, but I had this idea. And so the process of going independent, so to speak, which for a lot of people, I think means so many different things because it can all be a blend, right? But for me, I was flirting with that for a long time. And there were moments as a young designer where I was working at the agency and there was opportunities to collab with friends on art shows or pop-ups or whatever. And I would be like, oh, this is cool. I had a studio in Portland when I was there making interesting furniture designs or doing little experiments, but it never really felt like I hit it yet. And I think when it really hit for me was the story I told about being at that coffee shop in the Mission and having that first marble sneaker be purchased was like, wow, there's a direct correlation between if I just put in the work and the interest is there from someone, it just creates this perfect connection of commerce, creativity, inspiration. All of that is there. As an artist or a designer, I can create something that somebody loves for their own reasons, not the fact that I'm trying to sell it to them. Mm-hmm. That was a special moment, but I was flirting with going independent for years at that point because I was actually working. I think when we first met, I was working for a small startup at the time called Restore, Sequoia backed. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually wearing the same shirt that I was wearing on the day we met.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Because you guys were doing
full circle.
It. Yeah. I think my life is very full circle. I'm learning. There's a lot of returning. But yeah, we met that day. I think you were doing the film shoot of the whole space, creating the narrative around that project, which is beautiful. And from there, like that was a moment where that was the first time I was doing kind of like this contracting freelance type of relationship with a company. And for that one, I was like the creative director and construction manager of this big project. And it felt like, okay, so there's like different buckets of time I can give to the different aspects of me. So there's like the designer who wants to create experiences. And then there's the artist who wants to express himself. And those can sometimes blend, sometimes within the same project. But I'm thinking back to that time and I was starting to realize, hey, I don't think I really want to sit behind a desk all day for one company. I think I want to be able to express myself and serve people in different ways. And so that's where it all started. And when I then went over to Target, the opportunities of people asking me to make marble sneakers and even the EA Sports work for Madden started to bubble up to where I was like, wait, I actually do need to make a trade-off here about sitting on Zoom working for these fun projects for Target, but also having people be like, hey, can you make me a coffee table that's inspired by a sneaker I love? Or, hey, can you do these awards for NFL players? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think I love my job, but I think it's time to maybe start giving those a little more love. So that's when it all really started.
That's dope. And so was there a specific project that was like, okay, this is it. It's time to make that move, or a specific moment that was just like, what was that switch?
Yeah, the switch that was in 2021, I think. So I was working for Target, and I was doing a fun retail design project that you guys worked on with us. Game Room. It was like basically making an arcade to help Target learn about esports and video gaming, which is so fun and awesome. And at the same time, I'm contracting for them. At the same time, uh, EA Sports is like, hey, we want to do these awards. We want to go big this year. Uh, I think I was like looking at that opportunity. And then another friend of mine connected me with a potential collector who was like, hey, I love this particular sneaker. It was the Bapesta. And he was like, I love the sneaker. Can you make me a coffee table based on this shoe? And I was like, say no more. And so I was like, okay, I got these opportunities. What's it going to take to get there? What's the runway look like? I looked at my savings and I was like, based on the information I have right now, actually, I should pause here. I also talked to my wife, which is a key component.
Let's get that clear.
If you're partnered, you need to make sure that that's a joint conversation. It can't be like a unilateral thing, So yeah, I spoke with her, shared with her the numbers that I had. Obviously, being a designer without real knowledge of numbers and the runway and the savings, and I was like, based on these opportunities, I think it's time for me to make a jump with the studio. And so from there, put in my notice, and I dove into this work. And so it was a very busy first couple months of doing the 99 Club Awards for Madden, doing this coffee table commission, and then also doing a drop on Network, the app. So there's just a lot going on, and it was definitely trial by fire. But now I wouldn't trade it. I think at the time I didn't know a quarter of what I know now about what it takes, and what I know now I think is not even a fraction of what it will take to lead a full life of learning and experiences and ups and downs. But I'm so grateful for that transition moment of like, all right, there's enough opportunities here, and I'm making a trade-off, and what do I really care about doing with the life that I have? Or like people talk about like the short life you have, what are you going to do with it? That was that moment. And
that Bape table was crazy. I remember seeing that. I was like, that was dope. I was like, I don't even know how you did that, and just the color combinations, and just that was dope. So at that time when you did that, you didn't have your studio yet. Were you working out of like how are you producing all of this stuff?
So the transition on that was crazy. Like the first year I did the Madden Awards, they were basically made in my kitchen. So I work with marble vendors like around the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So up in Santa Rosa, like an hour north of SF where I live, San Jose, hour south, East Bay, all over the place. I got vendors that I partner with everywhere to do things like packaging or get things cut, whatever. And so I found a bunch of marble to use for these awards, and I brought it over to this water jet cutter up in Santa Rosa, Marin Design Works, who I love, and I will always sing their praises. They're amazing. They were the ones that took the chance on me to actually make the first marble sneakers that I did. They were like, all right, bring it here. Let's see what we can do. This is crazy, but let's do it. I was cutting so many tiny pieces. And so I picked up all the pieces, brought them back to my apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, and basically made the awards for Aaron Donald, Devontae Adams, these heroes of mine, Patrick Mahomes, in my kitchen. So it was like, I think, it was definitely Aaron Donald, Devontae. Devontae was made in studio later, so I'll switch that up. I'll go back. Yeah. So like, I picked up all those pieces, brought the pieces back to my place in San Francisco, 1-bedroom apartment, and I made these awards for guys like Aaron Donald and Patrick Mahomes.
That's
at the
crazy.
coffee table. At the same time, my wife was making 2 wedding cakes for our friends because this was COVID. So like there weren't like different bakers weren't open and things like that. They actually asked her to make wedding cakes because she's such a talented baker. And so we had these 2 operations going on simultaneously in our kitchen. And I'm like creating these pieces, like doing this puzzling, these marble inlays, pouring epoxy, doing all that stuff. This definitely was a health code violation. So
Yeah.
hopefully, again, statute of limitations on this, but
That's funny. I love that, man.
it was wild. So yeah, that was how it started. And then my first studio in SF was actually down in the basement of a building across the street, which used to be a sauce closet for 4505 barbecue on Divisadero.
Mm,
It's where they have their sauces. And
that's funny.
it was like a half basement thing inside the walkway between 2 apartment buildings. And it was like the padlock from the outside, light switch on the outside. Everything was very
Damn.
raw. It was like unfinished. And I was working in there for 6 months. And that's where I made like the first, like the Cactus Jack 6 shoe that I made. That's where I started the 99 Club Awards. That's where I started that's where I started the second year of 99 Club Awards. And then the Babe Table. And one night I was working in there and it was like kind of late. People were having a dinner party in the backyard of this apartment building.
Mm,
And it was like a bunch of folks. And I'm working in there, like sanding some stone or something like that. And they finished their dinner party and they're like all walking out past this little half window that looks into the basement. And they're carrying all their stuff. And one of them stops and she goes, "Oh my gosh, it's a guy. I think he's living in there." And I was like, and so
that's funny.
yeah, at that point, I was like, I don't think this studio is going to be very client facing for me. I think it's time to transition to a better space from this closet.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
That's
from there, that's where I went to the studio I'm in now in
uh,
Dogpatch, San Francisco.
it's
Yeah.
clean. I haven't been there yet. I want to come see it, but the pictures that I saw, it's really nice. Um,
Thanks.
taking it back to, I think the story of what you're talking about of this 1 bedroom apartment, working at the table, you and your wife, doing that and moving forward together. How important has it been for you to have a supportive partner, right? Because you hear a lot of these, people that reach the highest level of success and they're like, I couldn't have done it without my wife, or I couldn't have done it without my husband, and having that partnership and stuff like that. What has that meant for you? I know that's a little different than art and stuff like this, but I think this is a big, important part of the story of people's journey and finding the right partner and being able to kind of grow and build together.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah. I mean, first of all, like what I love about your pod is how you get into more of that thoughtful mental side of all of it. It's not just about the creative, but it's about like who we are as people.
Yeah.
My partnership with my wife is so crucial, so crucial. Like she's my business partner. She's my board member. She's my advisor. She's my copy editor for my newsletter. I mean, all these things she does. So you definitely would call her like an unsung hero of the studio, but she's a really inherent part of all this. For me, there was an aspect I mentioned before about if I had known more about numbers and forecasting and all that stuff through our early conversations about going independent, we think back on it now and be like, wow, would we have made the call to be like, yeah, go for it, like chase these opportunities and go get it? And we made the decision at the time, yes, go for it. And she trusts me, and so she supports me through that. The challenge is when I'm having my very spiky times of the ups and downs, that's where it becomes like it's about trust. It's about me continuing to put in the work regardless of whether opportunities come. It's about doing things that make her proud and make me proud of myself. And so there's actually a huge mental game to deciding to go independent that people don't really think about when they first say, oh man, it'd be sick to have a studio, it'd be sick to have an artistic practice or like my own production company or whatever. You start to have to wear all these different hats, and you actually get a huge leg up if you have a partner who believes in what you do and wants to be a part of that. Because there's some partners joke like, oh, we can never work together.
Mm-hmm.
And when my wife and I were younger and I was working at Nike and she was working at a consulting firm, and we would joke like, we could never work together. But then now that I've gone independent, we work together more than I ever could have imagined would work together. And so she's been hugely helpful, but it's not necessarily in the ways that you would expect. It's like the small, simple ways of just saying like, hey, this path is really challenging. There's days where I'm, super down, and she helps buoy me. But then there's days where she's really down because of other aspects in her life. And I have more flexibility because I'm not at another job. And so I can actually have time to be like, hey, I'm going to take care of you right now. What do you need? And so there's ways we can help each other out. And I think the challenge that I face is when I feel a need to be productive because I'm independent. Sometimes that productive energy can be sent toward things that are maybe not productive for my business. So like if I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling like I need to do something right now. Sometimes when I'm at home with her, that can get translated to like, let me like do the dishes like 10 times. Let me take the trash out. Let me do all these things. And so one of the things I love her for is she says like, hey, none of that stuff matters right now. You should be focusing on the things you need to focus on, which is like somebody reached out to me about an opportunity for a commission. And it's like, hey, I've got all these ideas I want to do, but I don't know what is right for this person. So then it's like, hey, actually dive into this opportunity and like go after it and go do it. And so I'm really grateful for her for keeping me on track sometimes, because I think sometimes people that want to be independent and don't want to sit, in the day job their whole life are also the same people that sometimes lack like, organization or specific focus of like one thing after another. Every entrepreneur is different, but I feel like for me, I've been honing through being inspired by people who have intense focus and are decisive, but also my wife having feedback that's like, hey, this stuff is superfluous. Focus on things you really need to do and care about and want to do right now.
Yeah, that's priceless. That's priceless when you have that support and you have that person that believes in you, because there's entrepreneurship and being independent and all that stuff. It comes with a lot of doubts. And like, sometimes you'll be high, like, oh, I'm the greatest in the world. Then you're like, what am I doing? I need to go get a job. Like this isn't working. And so to have somebody that understands that and can balance you, I feel like that is priceless. And I feel that it's you hear about it a lot, but I feel like I honestly feel like it's the biggest cheat code. I feel like having a good partner and having somebody to support you is one of the biggest things that you can do that's going to get you to where you want to go, and having that partnership and being able to balance it. I think from what you said about the productive energy, I think where my biggest thing that I had to work on is the balance, right? So you could get super consumed for myself, super consumed in the day-to-day grind of all this stuff, but then being able to make time for your partner and being able to make sure that, you all are doing things and you're going out and you're making her a priority. And, these things of just balancing all of that stuff out. And so that's been my hardest part, is like, okay, I gotta take a break because I get too in the mode sometimes.
Yeah, I feel you. We have the same challenges too, because also if both partners are working, there are specific windows of time that you can really devote to each other in the way that you want. So trying to make the most of those with like date nights, or just like even small moments where like if I'm working from home the same day as she is, like have a quick moment to like dance in the kitchen for like 30 seconds or whatever. Like those moments are priceless. And definitely there's a lot of times if you're really firing on all cylinders and you got a lot of projects going and you're both busy, you often don't have those moments. So you have to like try intentionally to keep that balance. And some people these days, like balance is interesting because there's almost like a give and take that people describe, or like a point counterpoint on balance. I think for people that are following their passion, like you and me, like life is so blended, everything's blended. So figuring out ways to like loop in your partner on things that inspire you and then get inspired by them, but like by the things they like. And then also seeing inspiration, even if it's maybe a bit of a stretch, like maybe their work event or something that you wouldn't expect that you'd be really inspired by, but then go and just like have an open mind, be like, this is my moment to connect with them. So let's just dive in and be present and have fun at this type of thing.
Love it. I remember we were talking about it before. We were talking about a book. I think you read The War of Art, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you go with that? Like, do you have to force a flow? When you get into the flow state, can you like automatically get there to create? Have you gotten to a point now, because I have not, where you can like force that flow or set it up to make it flow? How does that work for you when you get in that creative zone?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there used to be an exercise I would do called like a flow state doodling when I was really trying to create art. And I would just like put a marker down on a paper and just like do a squiggle and then draw lines around it, or like create the outlines for that random squiggle and like get hyper focused on that and then use that to like liaison into something else. But what I realize is, for me, there's like a natural ebb and flow of hyper productivity that happens. So like there's a ingestion of inspiration, of connection, of daily life, of just real moments. And then that all needs to go somewhere. So inevitably I will then like need to siphon that to creativity or creation or productivity in some way. And often that's like making art or, creating a connection with someone around an opportunity or whatever. But the flow state thing is super challenging. It's so unique for each creative person. Like each person has their own different way. So I would agree with you that I haven't nailed that by any stretch. But what I realize is there will come a time where if I've been away from that flow state or away from the studio for a certain period of time, I will be like running for the studio. I'll be like running to create something. And sometimes it comes out in the most random ways. Like I'll just like need to do some drawing at a restaurant, like on the back of the menu to like, and then just like give it to the person that I'm eating with and just like, here, this is for you. And it's about like creating and connecting. And I think the flow state happens in people who can shut out all the distraction. And sometimes we let in too much distraction to be able to find that flow state. Like I think a lot of creative people can have those moments where they finally sit down at the table and they got their paper and they're drawing and they're just getting into it. And then it clicks and they're like, oh, this idea leads to another and leads to another, leads to another, or going deeper into the same painting or same art piece or diving deeper into all the stems of a song or whatever, like whatever they're doing. And it's okay that it doesn't happen all the time. And I think that if we try to force it, it eludes our grasp. So there's a little bit of that, I feel.
I agree. What inspires you?
You definitely inspire me.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm inspired by opportunity and scale and time right now. So lately, there's a couple projects I've been working on. Like one, I do this big studio party every year. And I usually try to unveil something new at the party, whether it's body of work I've been creating over the year, maybe some of the process work around the Madden Awards. But this year, what I did was I laid down 36 feet of white primed canvas, like painting canvas, onto the floor of my studio. And I crowdsourced my biggest time-based art piece yet. So lately I've been inspired by time and scale. And in this piece, for about 4.5, 5 hours, I think it was all told, it was like 4 hours and 45 minutes, I had laid down this white, pristine, snow white primed canvas onto the floor in my studio, which generally has a lot of stone dust and just mess in it. And the studio was all cleaned up. People came through and I just let them walk all over this canvas for almost 5 hours. And that created my next piece. And what happened during that piece is I thought it would pick up kind of like you ever seen like a grave rubbing or something like that? It would pick up the tile floor and the textures and the footprints from the Air Force Ones, et cetera. But what it actually created was this magnet for like one of my my wife's close friends brought their two kids, and one of them loves to draw, and so she started actually drawing on the floor, and then somebody else started drawing on the floor, and then someone else
Wow.
just dropped some paint on the floor from I let people paint on the wall and stuff like that, and it just created this piece that took on a mind of its own, and it was also happened to be the biggest art piece I've ever made. And so just today, my landlord of the studio building let me go into another much bigger space and then document that 36-foot wide piece of art from above on a scissor lift. And so we went in and photographed it, filmed it. It was just a beautiful moment to have this narrative from laying down this canvas. Everyone can walk on it. It creates a visual record of this experience.
Wow.
And then taking it out of context again to create its own art piece. So that's been inspiring me like crazy right now. For sure.
Where the hell did you like come up with, like, that is so creative and it makes so much sense on so many levels, right? Like, have you always just thought differently? Did this come from, are your parents artists? Like, where did this come from?
Well, I think I've always been definitely a creative kid for sure. So always playing with Legos, drawing, doing whatever I could to create. One of the favorite pieces I ever made when I was a little kid was a little tiny 3-dimensional diorama thing of Lake Erie near Pennsylvania, near Erie,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. So my grandparents lived on this cliff overlooking Lake Erie, just like in the woods. And I remember going down to this cliff, which was actually really funny because back in the day, like I think in like the 60s and stuff, people would just like throw trash off this cliff, but then they started cleaning it up when people understood like about littering and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would go down there and I created this little piece of like this log. There was like a little circular log and it had this little chunk in it that I thought looked like a cliff. And I actually took a little paintbrushes and I painted a little diorama of the lake with like a little wood chip for a boats and stuff like that. And I still think about that piece because it was kind of like this combination of nature and a moment in time and this need to express and connect. That I think is the blend of inspiration that represents me as a artist, as a creative person, designer, artist, etc. Because I think even the work for Nike or the work for Madden, like these are all moments in time. You're capturing a season or capturing a moment in my life working for Nike or whatever. It can all stem back to time, relationships, and connection. And I think even as a young guy, I was inspired to create, one, because my mom was a great pianist, still is, and would paint for me, do really good watercolors. Like she would like draw my sister and stuff. And then my dad was a doctor and he would actually draw on his patients. So he would do like a seasonal scene. Like if he was like working on somebody's leg or something, he would take a marker and like draw like a snowman or like a leprechaun or something like that. And I think those little moments. Oh, and also he used to make me the best birthday cakes. My dad would stay up all through the middle of the night after he got home from work and make me these birthday cakes that were so magical. Like it made me like a space shuttle cake. He made me a cake that looked like a BMX park, like a swimming pool. Everything was so crazy. And it just got me going that we can infuse creativity into every aspect of life, even if it's not the normal venue. Like that actually creates a big spark when there's a setting that you're in where maybe people don't really show creativity or don't agree that they're creative or something, maybe making presentations at work or whatever, making documents or something. You can just tweak it a little bit, throw in some of your own spark, your own creativity, and you can just dazzle people. And so I think looking back on my life, it's just been about communicating moments, dazzling, and inspiring others. I think that's why I'm a creative.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds amazing with the foundation that your parents had. Are you an only child or do you have siblings?
I'm a middle child of 3.
Middle, okay.
5 years on each side.
Oh,
right in the
okay,
middle.
okay. So it pretty much was a whole different world. You were probably just by yourself then. Because 5 years when you're young is a big difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, somebody told me a couple years ago that if you have like more than like 4 years between siblings, they're kind of like only children, because
Yep.
you don't get those like formative high school years where your older sibling is either like bullying you or like
Yep.
protecting you in high school. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how about
It's
you? How many
interesting.
siblings do you have?
I have a lot of brothers. So I have a brother that is he's 32. I think John's 32. And then
Mhm.
we have a brother that is just turned 27. And then I have a whole older brother in Texas that I believe is 41.
There you go.
So it's interesting, but it was my mom's only child. So, I'm her only child. And so that was a interesting experience. And then the age difference too, and the gap, it was, like I said, it you kind of feel like you're the only child because it doesn't correlate, especially a decade. Like, 10 years is a long time, 8
Yeah.
years is a long time. And so, but siblings are cool. I see people that have siblings and have like close relationships with them. And it's like, I kind of wish I had somebody that was close to my age to be able to go through it with. But I feel like
Yeah.
as you start to, navigate life, you start figuring out. And then being the oldest too, your parents are figuring things out. They're like, oh, well, that didn't work. So let's not do that again. So,
Very
you
true.
get you get a lot of that. You get a lot of the trial and error, as
Yeah.
as
Are
as
you
the
the
first
oldest?
kid. Yeah. Yeah. The
Oh,
oldest
wow.
that
You're the
we grew up. So my older brother,
oh, okay.
we
True, true.
yeah, we met when I was like 22. And so we didn't grow up together. So I was always, the oldest in the immediate family. So it was always, trial and error, figure it out. But it's been
Totally.
great. It's I love my brothers. Family is family is something special. It's something that is to be valued for sure.
For sure. I mean, especially like thinking about it a lot during the holiday season too. Like,
Yeah.
I love my sibs, and it's funny. Like sometimes parents like will say, like, I'm not a parent yet, but I've heard parents say like, I got 3 kids and they're all the most different person they could
Yeah.
possibly be. Each one is so different, and I love my sibs, and we're all creative in our own ways. And
It's cool.
it's funny when we get back together, we can like joke in the same ways and things, but we're all leading our own lives, and yeah, it's a really nice through line of life to have that connection with someone somewhere in the world, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, I have a daughter that's 4,
Oh, beautiful.
only child. So it's
Mhm.
gonna be cool talking about family for the holidays and stuff like that. We had to push this back. So thank you for being flexible. Had a bunch of things going on at the house, trying to host the family for the first time at my house. So it's gonna be good. I'm
Congrats.
excited about it.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So what is next for the studio? And what's next for you? This is the end of 2023.
Yeah,
What is something that you're very proud of that you accomplished this year, and what's something that you're looking forward to next year?
thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think this year the world is a very challenging place, and this
Hmm.
year I think the success was actually to quote one of your previous pods, like staying in the game. It
Hmm.
was about staying in the game, and there's last year was very challenging on a lot of levels. And while people often see like outward success of, like if I have a word with Travis on his podcast, like that's something on the outside, but on the inside, the success is like the day to day. Like, did I make it through this day? Did I
Hmm.
keep pushing when the opportunities didn't come, or when projects got dropped? I've had a lot of projects this past year that were cut for different reasons, like budget or whatever, and that's just how it goes. As a creative person, you have these opportunities, you give it your all, and the real lesson is, you know, it doesn't matter either way. If it doesn't work
Hmm.
out, that's learning. If it does work out, let's go, keep going,
Hmm.
and try to learn along the way. So yeah, the big win from last year was staying in the game,
Hmm.
going deeper into community, realizing you can be technically able, you can be highly creative, you can be productive, but you also need to be in community and in relationship with people. That's how it all works.
Hmm.
So stay in the game, inspiring others, building connections. That's what felt like a big win this year for sure. And then next year, I'm very stoked. I have a really great relationship with a couple of friends who have collected some of my work. I actually met them through my wife, and we've become close over the past, I don't know, 6 years or so. And they've actually started to get inspired by my practice on a deeper level, where they bought some of my pieces, which inspired this most recent the party prints that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The piece was called 6 Months in Dog Patch, and it was a piece based on the first 6 months of time in my studio in San Francisco, where I was creating these marble pieces, creating a lot of dust and spray and splatter all over this grinding booth that I created. And one day, a friend of mine, Jason, was shooting photos in the studio, and he was like, "Man, this is beautiful. The texture is beautiful." And so that created my next piece, and I actually cut it off the wall, framed it up, and that piece became part of a triptych that these friends bought, and they were like, "We love this piece. Can we go deeper into this artistic relationship?" And I'm super inspired to say that they commissioned me to do a 3-year long
Wow.
collaborative commission opportunity where I'll be creating 4 or so pieces for their home and helping them design the spaces around those pieces. So this blends my background in experiential and in environmental design, like spaces, with my art practice and where it's going with this time-based art, relationship-based art. It feels very locked in to the path. It feels very aligned with everything that I've been putting into this artistic and creative journey. And so I'm super excited about where that's going to go. And like anything, it can go all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
We could create some sort of piece that's inspired maybe by my work with marble, or maybe go in a completely different direction. It's very wide open right now, and it feels super generative and expansive for 2024. So I'm really stoked about that.
That sounds so cool. I can't wait to see that develop. I like how you
Thanks.
document stuff too and kind of record and storytell on your social. So that's been good. I think going back to 2023, this last year, it was challenging for us too, right? There was a lot of stuff, like what you said. People cut budgets, things were changing. People were nervous in the market of just figuring out what they were going to do. So a lot of, again, for us too, stuff got dropped. And that's why that definitely was what inspired the podcast around staying in the game and just, not giving up, just staying in the game and figuring out the course of what that looks like. And just like that first piece that you had that, didn't make it to the show and ended up cracking, that was the catalyst that led to something else that wouldn't have happened if that part didn't happen. But when you're looking at it and you're in the moment, it feels like it's failure, or it feels like something went wrong. But then when you look back, it was like, oh, it was part of the plan to get me to build the mindset up, or to build these resources, or to dig deeper into this creative space of, oh, I have to figure this out in a different way that you didn't know was a catalyst to get you to where you want to go. And so, yeah, that's cool to hear, that perspective of yours and kind of just what's coming up in these next 3 years. I mean, that sounds hella cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully some more awards and kits and fun experiences along the way.
It's coming. So where can people find you? Where can they support? Do you have stuff like, stuff that people could purchase, or is everything just commission only, or how does that work?
Yeah, I generally work on commission only, and I create more longer term experiences with clients. So either corporate or private clients. Yeah, I mean, lately I've been really inspired by my newsletter, actually. So I have a Substack I've been putting out every month for the year, and it's been awesome. So I share, it's basically a look into my studio. So what I'm making, what I'm seeing, what I'm reading, what I'm listening to. Cool. I put a playlist on there every month, and the music is all from songs I've heard through the month of being out in the world and doing things and getting inspired by others. So that one I love. So that's on Substack. You can find me there. I think it's Brian B. Madden on Substack. And then Instagram, of course, for the creatives, Brian B. Madden there. And then, all the other ones, I think Twitter /X, I think there's a TikTok out there somewhere. Made some TikToks in my day, and and then I think because I'm a corporate guy, the LinkedIn is there. So if people want to connect with me, Brian B. Madden on LinkedIn.
I love it. Well, Brian, continue to inspire folks. I'm inspired by this conversation. I think your creativity opens up something in my head of like, oh, I need to think deeper into this in terms of the story and stuff. And that piece that you talked about that you did at the studio is just super creative. And excited to see what you create in 2024. And hopefully we get to collaborate on some more projects. And, I really appreciate everything that you have helped me with and helped our agency and everything that you're bringing to the world.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.